System maintenance.
Do great things. And most importantly, we do believe in our students and our families and what their abilities are as we continue to learn and grow and listen and support. So relative to
So,
the
Mr. Scott, I'm going to jump in. I know
okay,
you're rolling. You're rolling. So I'm going to jump in. You said something very critical. Again, I don't want these critical moments to be lost. Um, and I don't think it was a plug. I think it was the reality. This cannot be curriculum one day, something else the next day, something else the next day. another group of people coming in trying to do something totally different again, right? So what you're saying is you need some consistency and time, and people need to be patient with that consistency and time because you're trying to onboard everybody. And that's not going to take yesterday. It's not going to take a week, or it's not even going to take one calendar year. So just to be clear, I've seen this work, and it takes anywhere from 3 to 5 years just to get the foundation laid and going. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it takes time.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Sampson, for reiterating that. And I'm going to transition before we get to the actual strategic plan update. This is what I'm giving is just an overview, a snapshot, and some of the work that we've began relative to our strategic plan. Another question that was posed to us is the purpose and functionality of diagnostic assessments. So whether we're talking iReady, NWEA, and just to kind of, give our community an overview. These are adaptive assessments. Not all, so what I mean by that, not all students get the same question. So it's not like a 50 question test and everyone has the same questions relative to like what we do with the Ohio State test or end of course assessments. These do measure growth over time. They do provide trends in student learning. There's opportunities to personalize a student's learning path. Um, but this does not take away. So these benchmark assessments do not take away from the knowledge that our staff has about our students. So I want to make sure that point is crystal clear. As I said about the elements of curriculum, assessments are a part of that. It doesn't take away from the knowledge of our students, and there is no magic wand that says, all right, if we put you in front of this computer screen for 40 minutes a week, X amount of days, that there's going to be a cure-all there. There's an artistry that our teachers then, our staff takes to use this one data point to help personalize that approach towards instruction. So kind of getting into a philosophical approach there, but I want to make sure that, as a community, we understand that these are moments in time, and what our teachers and staff do on a day-to-day, those formative assessments that happen in the classroom also are so critical to navigating every lesson, every unit. And then these benchmarks, so whether we're talking about NWA or iReady, let us know where we are in that moment of time. And then at times there's a national normative piece there. So just like, I realize my child, Grayson, love him. He's 90th percentile relative to circumference of his head. I know that's because of me, but it gives me a national norm to know that not too many other kids have a bigger head than my son. Little joke there. But I'm saying that to bring back to the point that these are all tools, and as educators, as leaders in our district, it is our responsibility to help our staff have the right tools in their toolbox to do the job that's in front of them. And I'm going to put a plug here to make sure that we have a systemic approach towards that as well. And that's part of our conversations right now is, how from an organizational standpoint do we make sure that we have a systemic approach, knowing that some barriers that we have, transiency is a huge barrier, but also knowing that we want our staff to have greater collaboration across buildings, across grade levels. Well, some approaches that we need to take are to make those more systemic. Um, but I want to make sure, lastly, in regards to this NWA piece, I told Ross I wasn't going to go too long, but I apologize. Uh, Diagnostic tests are a piece of understanding student learning. They're just a piece. Uh, but we have to be careful in a couple things, that the learning is integrated. So we aren't taking students at a moment in time that are in red and grouping them all together all year. There has to be fluidity relative to how we group our students and either enrich or intervene. Learning is inclusive. So, we can all learn from each other and with each other, and we should. Um, and to be honest, ability grouping that is sustained over time could cause harm. So we don't want to use these assessments just to put kids in groups and say, there we go. But let's talk about how we can use that data to have fluidity. And when there is time, once again, trusting our educators to make those decisions to group accordingly. So with that being said, we've been doing some things on our strategic plan. And some of that is relative to the curricular pieces that I just discussed. Some of those are the conversations around assessments that I discussed. And a very exciting piece is, how we've evolved our district leadership team. We've been talking about that for some time now. So with that being said, I want to invite Ross into the conversation, and maybe Bill, if there's anything I missed about, Bill Oley, if there's anything I missed about that assessment piece that you feel like we need to highlight, just jump in. But at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Ross.
Yeah, what if we just tidy that up a little bit? Bill, Aretha, actually, do you guys mind just talking just a little bit about the diagnostic again, and just the discussion we've been having about NWEA and iReady? We'll just kind of finish that thought all the way through.
Sure. So about a week ago, elementary principals got together and we're looking at which resources that we can use consistently across buildings so that we don't have disparities in instructional tools from one building to the next. And Aretha has been looking at iReady data, and we started this conversation about, elementary is currently using NWEA as its diagnostic tool and growth component. And at middle school, they selected iReady. So the conversation on the table right now is, what if elementary and middle school hold hands so that we have that continuity between K to 8? And then, the other piece too is we can use one assessment for multiple means so that we don't have to overassess students. And iReady has the same components as NWEA, and our staff needs to look a little bit further into that. And we'd like to see elementary get some feedback from middle school. Aretha, did I miss anything in there?
No, great. You did great, Bill, as usual. But I just want to add that iReady also, besides just the continuity from grade to grade and being able to set goals from kindergarten through 8th grade that children understand, it also gives a common language if we hold hands, where they understand what their scores mean and have those conversations with teachers. But also part of our strategic plan is to make sure that we're teaching forward so that we're not continuing to look back to say, well, this kid's in the 4th grade, but, he's reading on a 2nd grade level. One of the pieces that iReady has that NWEA does not have is the ability to fill the skill gaps that come out of the diagnostic assessment. So when the assessment says, Joey needs, to be more fluent and Melissa needs to work on her comprehension, when they work in their MyPath, it'll take them to those pieces so that the tech resource can help to fill those skill gaps, while the human resource, which is our teachers, can really dive into, as Michael said, the artistry of teaching and learning in terms of understanding what our kids need on grade level, because the standards are going to, the assessment that they're going to get at the end of the year is the standards, and it's going to be grade level standards. And so our students need to be getting that as much as possible without our teachers taking time to go back and teach something that the kids haven't learned. We can have a tech piece do that, while our greatest asset, which is our teachers, can make sure that our kids are actually getting the on grade level instruction that they need. And that is going to come, I'll stop there. I can go on and on about leveling, learning targets and all that stuff. So we'll just go there. That's the assessment.
Excellent. So Bill, I heard you say something in there about over-assessing. We want to be sure that we're not over-assessing our kids, right? So how many NWA benchmarks annually does the elementary give, and how many, Aretha, how many iReady benchmark assessments do you give annually?
Yeah, we've been administering in the fall, winter, and spring. But I believe that there are additional opportunities through iReady so that we can have more formative assessments in the classroom and assessment item banks that teachers can choose from for quick checks for understanding.
And so if I'm getting this right, fall, winter, and spring, so those are 3 assessments, correct? 3
Right.
benchmark assessments. Those are summative. and they're all adaptive as well. So if we do the math, 180 days of instruction, and you're doing 3 assessments, in my opinion, that is not over assessing. That's less than 0.5%, less than 1% of the entire time, right? And now you're talking about with the iReady, you get formative assessments, which is in-class learning anyway. And the teachers just get some information as to where the kids are in that moment. And they get a clear picture. So it's really not an assessment. It's the form of assessments we practice in the class anyway. So I just want to clarify, just to make sure that folks aren't thinking that we're trying to over-assess kids.
Right.
When we're talking about 1% of our 180 days is year-round this benchmark assessment. So that's pretty darn good.
Yeah, and Dr. Sampson, also, like NWEA, the iReady diagnostic can be used to identify gifted, as well as some other pieces, other assessments that it can kind of take the place of. It's a pre-screener for gifted, it's a gifted screener, and it's a couple other assessments that it can take the place of also.
And just for the record, both of these are state-approved vendors that the state has approved as top quality assessment tools for districts to use, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Thanks
You
for
guys are
pointing out.
you guys are baking. Yeah, you're making it happen. I think we might as well end the meeting now.
Oh.
And I promise I won't talk about the circumference of my head.
Well, Dr. Sampson, extra points if you do. And if you do it in context like Michael did, that's double the points, I think.
Yeah.
Hey, so
Absolutely.
just other updates then. So since we last met, our district leadership team has been selected, formed. We had our first meeting last week. So that action step is complete. We've got a team of 30 members. It's composed of, we've got folks from teachers, we've got some paraprofessionals, we've got some building leaders, some central office leaders. It's a really excellent, diverse team. We're really excited about that team. So the orientation for that team is complete. We partnered with the Historical Society to help us with that. So actually our first couple of meetings are at the Historical Society. And then part of this week's meeting with them will be actually by Bar Pisco from the Historical Society and History of Lorain. So that action step's complete. We're in good shape there. Then we've got, let's see, the next thing is we've actually added a few action steps in our teaching and learning to expand the arts. And so that process has been underway. We've been working on that for the last about a month now. And so our selection process is underway right now. And by the end of this week, we should have that team that'll be connected to our district leadership team to look at expanding the arts for not this coming school year, but the following school year. So just since we haven't talked about that in a larger group, but those action steps in short are to learn, first of all. So, and we need to take a look and see the types of arts models that first, so like an integrated model versus a discipline-based model to look at, to see. So we need to go through the research. We need to look and kind of study other models or other districts and schools that have those models in place, and then match that up with our needs. Then the next thing will be to really plan for implementation, and then again for implementation for the following school year. So that's pretty cool. Very excited about that. Then we also have, as we've been looking at really collecting information from our goals, we had a really pretty cool development here in the last week. So our goals for on level are fairly straightforward, and then where we got I think the really cool opportunity here is as we're talking about measuring our students with the post-school outcomes. So within 6 months of graduation, what % of our students are employed, enrolled in the post-secondary option, part of an apprenticeship, or enlisted in the military. We had one of our high school administrators just point out, so what happens when we call, and we're working all through all the logistics of it. Says, all right, so we make a call and then somebody says, well, I'm not doing well right now. What's our response to that? So we invested time, effort, and energy to help to develop this young person and then get them ready to be a productive member of society. And then they let us know, I need some help. We can't just stop there and say, well, thanks for answering, and then we move on. So from there, we're looking at what the follow-up might look like from a proactive sense. And so we'll likely in the next couple of weeks, actually probably add another action step connected to our goal about what kind of a follow-up looks like for that. So that's just kind of in the, we don't have a real clear picture for that, but that's a pretty exciting, I think, development, just how we can connect again after graduation as well to provide supports for our students.
And if I can jump in real quick, Ross, just to stress one point, it's not just about kids who are, or adults now who are struggling and need social services, but kids who went to college and they're struggling with the second semester, or what do I do now? Or how do I do financial aid for next year? Or, I mean, I just had a baby. There's 1,000 things that can happen, and our job is to be there for them. So, yeah, I just really appreciate the folks who brought that idea to the table, and yeah, we're gonna toss that up and make it really strong.
Yep. And then a couple of just the here and nows again. So we've been working the last few weeks now to get ready for next year. And so the big question is, so what are we going to do, and how can we prepare for our students, knowing that they're going to come in? I mean, they always come in at different levels of, with skill development, content knowledge. We know that's going to be pronounced even more with due to the pandemic. So we've been working on prioritizing standards for the fall, developing level learning targets. So taking that standard, really unpacking it at grade level, entering to grade level, and then coming out of grade level, and then starting to design instruction that aligns those learning targets. So that's connects to the action steps around. We got a few here that links, but our multi-tiered system of support, we got a couple action steps that starts to address. It also addresses just kind of an introduction to the universal design for learning. So we're thinking about designing for everybody, aligned to the learning targets. And then also under teaching and learning, it connects to the action step about prioritizing instruction. And Michael talked earlier about, the standards driving everything. Well, we're starting that work now. So that, and then the last thing here, when our DLT meets this week, they will be taking a look at, we'll be forming implementation teams around those first action steps on our action step tree. So in the teaching and learning, we'll be taking a look at really understanding our curricular resources. So that's teaching and learning action step 4. We'll start work around our hiring, recruitment and retention practices for staff. We have, let's see, I'm drawing a blank here on the next one. Learning module around norms of collaboration, since collaboration is going to drive so much of what we do in our plan. And then we've also got another healthy culture action step around communication protocols. So, our district leadership team is not composed of, representatives from everybody, every school, every kind of group across the district. So one of the very first things we have to do is make sure that we develop a two-way communication protocol. So we're intentional about, communicating in a two-way fashion with all the different groups and then our schools. So those are some of the action steps that we'll be tackling coming up. And then the last piece is we finished the district level 1 needs assessment. The buildings just this past week finished their 1 needs assessment. Our principal meeting just a couple hours ago. We were aggregating and having that discussion up then to look for commonalities and common root causes and the supports we need collectively based on what the buildings determined in their 1 needs assessment. So that action step is, we just haven't checked complete yet, but that'll be complete as soon as we get off this meeting and actually do that. So we've had a lot here in the last month since we last did this update.
Well, great. Anything from the board or ADC questions regarding these couple updates from central office?
No questions for me. I'm just really glad for the update. It makes a lot of sense. And thank you for spending the time to do that in advance of our agenda. Thank you for arranging that.
Thank you.
Good work, guys.
Okay. All right. So I do have one question that's not on that update. It's just a quick update on graduation rate. Has there been an update on those numbers, finding the kids, getting them across the finish line here? I know we've got graduation coming up soon, and I know the team is working feverishly on this. So is there any updates on that?
Yeah, they are. And I appreciate the fact that you recognize that this time of the year, it becomes feverish. especially in the tail end of a pandemic. And Michael, I know you've got some more detail, but as I understand it, we have kids that if graduation was today, we would have 325 of our 393 students ready. That's about 83%. And we have a few more who are still sprinting to the finish line, which is at the end of the day on Friday. And
okay, breaking news. Jeff Graham is creating breaking news. Breaking news, we're up 3%, people. We are north of 80%. Under promise, over deliver. I love it.
Goal is to focus on kids. And again, I just want to applaud the high school staff, their leadership team, and then the teachers, sports staff. They've just put so much time and effort and energy into making sure the kids have what they need. And actually, I also want to take a moment to applaud our football coach. We were getting ready for a spring game. They had practice, and his athletes weren't where they wanted them to be. So they pumped the brakes and changed practices to study tables. And I think the first night there were 50 kids there, and that number grew as the week went on. So I just want to thank again, everybody who's focusing on making sure that our kids have what they need. So just
absolutely. Thank you so much. That's a great update. And behind the 83% that you just stated, it's all the other things that's happening, whether it's football coach, track coach, tutors, individual teachers, parents, community members. Everybody's trying to get the kids across the line. That is great focus. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to transition to healthy culture, which is part of the strategic plan. So would like for all the elementary principals just to kind of have a conversation around that. Is that correct?
Actually, what we planned for, again, before we got the update today or yesterday, whatever,
yesterday,
presentation that is collective. So we kind of have it by each school. They're going to take different sections and kind of walk through what collectively we're focused on. So I'm not sure if that's Ross or Bridget, wherever we landed, but if you could walk us through that, I'd appreciate it. So they're all kind of clumped together, but it's you'll see it breaks out consistent with what the agenda says.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for your flexibility.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Graham, and thanks to our ADC and our Lorain City Board of Education for the opportunity to talk to you about our elementary school supports. So like Dr. Graham just said, our team worked together to spotlight our successes and challenges to support students. And you'll hear about the things that are going well, some of the barriers that we faced along the way, and what we're doing to address those needs. So before we get started, I'd like to take a moment and introduce our elementary principals and assistant principals. And they'll introduce themselves by building, starting with Miss Amy Graves at Admiral King.
Hi, I'm Amy Graves, principal of Admiral King Elementary.
Hi, my name is Crystal Hamilton. I'm the assistant principal at Admiral King Elementary.
Good evening. I'm Christine Miller, principal at Frank Jacinto Elementary.
Good evening. I'm Mayra Coughlin-Ewers, assistant principal at Frank Jacinto Elementary.
Good evening. John Monteleone, principal of Garfield Elementary. And I don't think our AP is with us this evening. I think she had her son's soccer game.
Hello, I'm Stephanie Alexander Johnson, principal of Hawthorne Elementary.
I'm Brittany Brookbank and principal of Helen Steiner Rice Elementary School.
Good evening. I'm Jessica Dugan, assistant principal at Helen Steiner Rice Elementary School.
Good evening. My name is Chantel Lewis, principal of Lockmore School, place we're committed to academic excellence. And I always have to say hello to Mrs. O'Brien because she put together our preschool. So I always give her a shout out when I see her.
I'm not hearing from Krista, so hi, I'm Deb Pistolka. I'm principal at Palm Elementary.
Hi there, good evening. I'm Julie Calesi, assistant principal at Palm Elementary School.
Hi, I'm Marie Deschik, principal at Stephen DeHanas Elementary.
Good evening. My name is Monique Stewart. I'm the assistant principal at Stephen DeHanas Elementary.
Good evening. I'm Dr. Bridget Kaiser. I am the proud principal of Toni Morrison Elementary.
Hi, my name is Wendy Grugel. I'm the assistant principal at Toni Morrison.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Supriya Culleton, principal at Washington Elementary, and Donna Keenan, our assistant principal, is watching her son pitch a baseball game.
And we're actually going to turn it back over to the elementary principals, but I was going to share this quote that speaks to our work in the moment and our work ahead. But after the fine work of Mr. Scott, I think that we'll put this as a sub-bullet underneath that one. But students are more likely to be interested in what they're learning, more motivated to learn new concepts and skills, and better prepare for success in college, careers, and adulthood if what they're learning mirrors real life context, equips them with useful skills, and addresses topics that are relevant to their lives outside of school. And there's been so much work that's already been happening, and we have so much work ahead of us. So a huge thank you to our elementary team for collaborating and framing our successes and challenges around the themes and our strategic plan. We'd like to start things off with an overview of how we'll implement or start our multi-tiered system of support. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Bridget Kaiser, Principal Extraordinaire at Toni Morrison Elementary.
Oh, Bill, shop. I've been implementing, go back a slide, Ross. This is healthy culture. There we go. Sorry, thanks. I started piloting multi-tiered systems of support, which is MTSS, 2 years ago. I'd like to say 2 years, but this year, we'll say a year and a half, right? Because of the way that the year has gone. So I've been asked to kind of, talk about this very complex framework in a very succinct and simple way. So I'll try and do my best job. So if anyone has questions, especially after the presentation is done, because a lot of the elementary principals are going to be talking about it in their slides. But basically, MTSS is an overarching systematic framework that provides all students with the best opportunities for success, both academically and behaviorally in school. It's very proactive. So instead of waiting for students to fail, MTSS is an approach that aligns with academic, behavioral, and social emotional learning by integrating Pbis, which I think that many of you have heard that acronym, which stands for Positive Behavioral Interventions and Support. So this is like on the behavior side. And it marries RTI, which is response to intervention, which is then that academic piece. So MTSS is a model that provides supports to all students at every level. MTSS offers potential to create needed systematic change by strengthening school, family, and community partnerships, while developing the whole child in the most inclusive, equitable learning environment with the goal of closing the equity gaps for all students. So MTSS is achieved in a very simple way that I'm going to provide this to you by providing high quality, explicit, but intentional instruction to all students, both academically and behaviorally, by providing a wide range of interventions matched to students' needs across domains, and it's based on data. It's achieved by monitoring the progress of students frequently to make decisions about changes in instructions or goals. Also by integrating RTI, which we just talked about, and Pbis to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of all school systems. So it's very complex and it's comprehensive, and it's the kind of the motto for MTSS is that you have to go slow to move fast. So that's kind of MTSS in a nutshell. And now I'm going to turn it over to Principal Amy Graves to talk about healthy culture.
Good evening. So I'm going to spotlight some of the healthy culture successes we've had across all of our elementary schools. One of the biggest ones is that we've introduced social workers this year for the very first time, which has been absolutely tremendous. Not only do they do the typical social work things you might think of, like providing clothing, furniture, beds to families that need those things, but they've also provided resources in the form of counseling to our parents and our families. They're going on home visits with myself. They are going on home visits with our attendance officers. They are helping us find barriers to attendance to some of our more challenging behaviors. And we're able to provide little bite-sized nuggets of support at home to break down those barriers and increase student attendance and decrease some of those challenging behaviors. Parents are feeling more comfortable with us. They're calling in, asking for social workers, trusting us enough with things like, can you help me so I don't get evicted this month? Yes, of course, let me put you in touch with the social worker. Just absolutely phenomenal. Myself as a principal, for the first time, I've been able to not only just triage these things, and that means just treat them temporarily, we're actually able to go beneath the surface and find the root cause and help our families make some sustainable life changes. And they are absolutely loving it. Another part of that we have piloted at Admiral King Elementary is the Parent Project, which is a class that I co-host with my social worker every Monday evening for an hour and a half for 10 weeks, where we specifically talk about how to parent challenging children. And we all provide examples and we practice things each week. So it really has helped me to build a better relationship with my families. And we are going to be offering that district-wide next year at all of our schools. And so we have people trained to offer it in both Spanish and English next year to reach more of our families. Okay, morale boosters and team building to lessen the anxiety of our staff and students. Each building is sort of like its own family. So principals, assistant principals deliver daily announcements and they add their own touch, whether it's a fun fact or a riddle of the day to promote that family atmosphere. Administration and teachers are doing more home visits to deliver things like quarterly award certificates or certificates of success in different programs. We're also mailing those home. So the students are excited to get mail in their mailboxes that has their name on a certificate saying they did something good. We're also using social media to shout out our students for those quarterly awards and posting pictures of students with their certificates. And our parents are starting to look for those things online or in the Class Dojo school story. Teachers are shouted out by parents and administrators in those daily announcements or online during some of those class sessions. So we've really tried to think of ways to boost not only our students, but our staff's morale as we've gone through all the different changes this year. Promoting self-care with staff has been very important to us. All of us administrators put a huge emphasis on Teacher Appreciation Week and did a few things throughout the week, from the gift of time to treats and goodies, some team building activities to really let our teachers know just how much we appreciate them every day. Some of those things included a staff art activity, a staff pickleball game, staff yoga sessions, walking Wednesdays, and healthy tracking, where we all compare our steps each day to try to increase them each day or each week. Increasing the communication with our families, that's one of the positives that has come out of COVID. This has really skyrocketed this year because it's had to. We use Class Dojo in many of the elementary schools, which is sort of like a protected Facebook, if you're not familiar with it, where us principals can post on the school story. We can share pictures, we can put little announcements, and parents, they can message me directly as the principal, or they can message the teachers directly, and we can communicate with them as soon as we get those messages. We have also have weekly attendance meetings. So, right, it's been hard to get people online, and sometimes we go to the door, they're not there. So we've set up weekly attendance meetings. Our social workers have been instrumental in working with our attendance officers and our APs to kind of make sure we're all working together, so that one day an attendance officer didn't go to the home, and then next week a social worker goes to the home and they didn't know that each other did that. But we're talking together and working together to all be on the same team to help, again, break down those barriers of why the children aren't able to get online or come into the buildings. We have an attitude across our buildings of not giving up on those folks that we can't reach. If we've done the home visits and we've tried to connect on Dojo and it's not working, we don't give up and just stop trying. We continue to do the phone calls. We continue to go to the door, and gradually that group is getting smaller and smaller, which is a positive, huge positive. Again, the ongoing communication, COVID has forced this to just explode through the social media, the Class Dojo, morning announcements. Parents are asking to see them. The communication is so much better. As a second-year principal, I would say I know my family's way better this year than I would have hoped to in my first 3 years as a building principal. And that's been a really awesome thing. Okay, PBIS student incentives. So PBIS is our positive behavior interventions and supports, and you just heard a little bit about it as one component of the MTSS. Again, many buildings have Class Dojo, so I told you one way we can use it as a communication tool. The other way is to keep track of all the positive things students are doing. They have a little avatar and they earn points for typical school behaviors, such as coming to school, following rules, doing their work, being kind to others. And then buildings either have a weekly or monthly incentive to celebrate those that have a certain positivity ratio to say, hey, we noticed you for doing the right thing and we are going to reward you. Okay. So next slide talks about some of those same things, but some of the challenges that we face with those same things. So the social workers, like I mentioned, have been absolutely tremendous. However, this year they're servicing 3 schools, which can be absolutely overwhelming at times when you're getting into the homes and building those relationships of trust, and you're starting a counseling relationship, but then maybe another school has an emergency and you have to step away, and we can't. We have to be available to help our parents that are coming to us with these sensitive issues. They are working faster than they can keep up with. Time for those social workers who are so busy. They need time to collaborate together. Many of our families have students in multiple buildings because some are in elementary, maybe one in middle school. So if we have a social worker that's really working closely with a family, they need time to talk together to say, hey, these guys are on my caseload. I just wanted to let you know. So again, we're not doing double the work with the same families. It's been a challenge to help our teachers reach all students equally, because some students have been remote all year. Some have been in the classroom and remote. Some are now 4 days a week. And we try to deliver the same instruction to everybody, call on them equally, make sure they have the same materials in their hands. So many schools have had times to pick up materials. Teachers have gone out and delivered materials. So we're constantly thinking about how we can be equitable, no matter if they're on our screen or right in front of us. Supporting the staff who are overwhelmed. Our teachers really haven't stopped too much since about March 16th last year when we were all sent home. I think someone mentioned, Dr. Graham, I think that we've restarted the school year approximately 4 times. We have learned all new technology-based programs. We've learned how to use the document camera and show our screen when we're teaching. We have learned how to take attendance differently. I mean, just every single thing has changed, and they have kept up with it, and they just want to keep working. Some were working late into the night, as late as 9 or 10 o'clock at first. We had to tell them that, you know, that's not sustainable, but they have really, really done their best to support our students through all these changes. And that's why we've done so many of those things like the pickleball, the walking, the art activities, to intentionally step away from those to-do lists. Keeping up with challenging contact information. So it's important that we can contact our families. Even our dojo is based on an email or phone number to first get connected. And many times when a student registers, registration takes all that information. And as the student gets older, they don't really get a chance to update that in the computer system that we all use, PowerSchool. So it's a challenge every year when they fill out the EMA at the beginning of the year to figure out how to get the correct phone number so that we can all have it when we look in PowerSchool and we're not calling phone numbers that don't work anymore. So we've been working with our registration, and I think we have some new systems coming up that will really help us with that, keeping up with information quicker. Communicating to reach all families, providing incentives to reach in-person and remote students. I think I've covered that one. And so that's all about healthy culture across elementary school. I'd like to turn it over to Miss Christine Miller, principal of Frank Jacinto Elementary.
Thank you, Amy.
All right. Before we get going into that, do we have any questions for the ADC or for the board regarding healthy culture? I know there was some stuff in the chat room as well. Any questions about that? ADC comments?
This is Patty. I have a question. Just to be clear, there's not a dedicated social worker at each building currently.
No, Mrs. O'Brien. We share our social workers with probably, for myself, 2 buildings and maybe 2 to 3.
And so is there a plan, and maybe this is a Dr. Graham question, is there a plan to move toward that goal of having at least, one social worker, a dedicated social worker at every building?
I'm not sure if it's going to work out to be one for every building, but the goal is to increase the supports. Yeah. And right now we're doing some surveying of our students in grades 6, 9, and 12 because we believe those students are old enough to answer the questions, and we can project that data to pre-K 12 to identify specifically what the needs are. And I guess it comes down to a couple of things. Do we need social workers or do we need more guidance counselors? Because although there is overlap, they do have unique niches. So again, our goal is to make sure we're providing the supports, but that may or may not work out to be exactly one social worker per building.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And then I had one other question about teacher professional development. And I wondered, what did it look like during the pandemic, and what is it going to look like moving forward as we're kind of going through all this?
And I'm going to actually, there was a conversation today. So Michael, did you want to speak to that? I know that was part of the conversation that took place when I stepped away. I can speak to it, but my information is a couple days old.
Just some clarification on that question, Mrs. O'Brien. Is that in regards to healthy culture, professional development, or academic?
I guess it may, when we were, the previous slide, when we were talking about supporting staff and having them sort of, step away and all of that, it made me think about PD and how that might be, something else that supports teachers. And so that's how I was thinking about it. So answer it now, answer it later. That's fine.
And we can speak to it again. Some of it's just how it's delivered, but I think the crux of your question, if I understood it, is how are we going about designing it to making sure that we're meeting the needs of our teachers and our building level administrators. And there was a conversation today about what that looks like.
Yeah. Quickly, just to say, we need to personalize our approach is the takeaway. We leveraged this year a lot of our internal experts, and we can continue to do that, and we should continue to do that. And we have a library of professional learning that we'll have for years to come, and we have to update because technology updates. But some of our practices moving forward, when you look through our plan, you'll see a lot of those training series, and they have to look different. I think one of the big takeaways coming out of this is professional learning doesn't always need to be synchronous. There's lots of asynchronous opportunities that we can present for our staff. We have to leverage our professional learning communities as professional learning. Oftentimes in the past, we've looked at those as compliance meetings, but those are valuable times every week we learn from and with each other. We have to give our leaders what they need to, and they've been carrying a heavy load this year. But we also need to make sure that we're nurturing their growth and helping them. I'm looking for one in particular, continue to transform, because as stated, we've got to feed our leaders just as much as we look to feed our staff as a whole. So we'll work on this collaboratively and together. But we learned a lot this year of what we can do and what the expertise that we do have within our ranks.
Excellent. Any other comments or questions regarding the healthy culture?
I just want to commend the teachers. I know my girls' teachers have done great with the communicating. That was one of the biggest thing I just picked from that. Class Dojo is amazing. The teachers have been so good with, my girls are still at home, and I have been able to contact them and they get right back to me, or vice versa. If they're having trouble getting into a class, they can text me, have her get into the other link. Or it's just been such a nice that I hope we keep up with the dojo next year, because it has been so easy to communicate with their teachers this year.
I just wanted to add that with all this planning that they've done since, I would say since August, that I'm really looking forward to the upcoming school year in this year, because I mean, yes, we've had COVID, but we've also taken the opportunity to, you know, to put together something to where you can really move forward. And I'm kind of excited about that.
All right. Okay, so let's move on to the next part of the agenda, please. Equity.
Good evening. So I just want to talk a little bit about our successes as far as the equity goes. So we were talking about developing a common Pbis language and practices. Many of us put together, you know, a Pbis plan for our schools prior to this upcoming school year, but then the district decided to put together the common Pbis language for the pandemic. So making sure that our kids know to, you know, wash up, back up, mask up, you know, that is constantly said to them. It's throughout the buildings, restrooms, you know, the kids come in, they're all masked up. They, you know, have their hand sanitizer as they walk in the door, they're getting their hand sanitizer. So we're following those CDC guidelines, making sure that our kiddos are doing what they need to be doing. Bringing back the Title I services by supporting our reading and ELA. Really focusing on the most vulnerable students or more grade levels. I think many of us looked at our third grade, you know, really working with the third grade, second graders, and then putting in those supports as we could during the day with the, you know, amounts of time we had.
I have a quick question. I'm going to stop real quick. Bringing back Title I. That's a big time statement. So I want to make sure that we unpack that publicly, appropriately, so people have a clear understanding what that is, rather than just a intuition or their own understanding of what that is. So can you please give some detail on that?
So, and Michael, I'll take your, or anybody else, you know, I'm new back to administration, but under a couple of years, we didn't have the Title I services, the Title I teacher that brings the supports in, you know, for small group learning, pulling, you know, using that pull out to help those students who are struggling in the areas of reading and ELA, you know, doing more of the fluency checks with students, or, you know, for in my case, we do a double dose of foundations, which is a, you know, phonetic learning how to read. But we didn't have that for a couple of years. So just, you know, bringing those supports back. Does that help?
Okay, so Title I services has been there because the funds have been there, right? So it's not like the funding has just disappeared. It's just using the funding in different ways that provides more support and equity. Is that what you're saying? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, yeah. And I don't
want people to think that Title I was not available.
Right.
And all the money that was allocated by the state and the feds weren't used, which is not accurate, correct?
They were used, but they were used in a different way. That's correct.
They were used in a different way. And now you guys are finding different ways to use it that's more equitable and appropriate for what you're trying to do with the strategic plan.
Right.
More targeted.
Okay. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right.
And developing an understanding of the RTI, which is the response to intervention, and the Pbis through the MTSS framework. So that overarching, you know, multi-tier system, and utilize, you know, having the teachers, the students understand what this Pbis is and what the response to intervention is. And I think Bridget did a very good job about explaining that at the beginning. So if you want more information on that, just let us know. Re-engaging our parents now that the pandemic restrictions have been lifted. You know, this was really tough not to have parents come in and teach them the things, not really teach them, but have them understand the things that we are using daily with the kids. One of the things that we found right at the beginning was, we handed our kids devices, handed them hotspots, or, got them internet. And many of the parents weren't understanding how to utilize some of the, programs that we were using, Google Classroom or Clever or, Seesaw. So, we are now, not that we didn't engage them then, but being able to face engage them. We are starting to bring back, our literacy nights. Many of us have this week, and actually this week, some literacy nights where we're doing it outside so that we can bring the parents in and really engage with them again. So, that's a really positive thing. Equitable access to instructional and supplemental resources district-wide. We have lots and lots of things that are available for our families, for our kids, that the supplementals, IXL, Seesaw, the programs that we have. So, and that's used throughout all of the elementary buildings. And that's very helpful to our remote learners as well as our in-person learners. We did, as Ross talked about earlier, conducting a root cause analysis of our systems, practices, and processes. What are these reasons that we need to engage in better practices or processes? And then our teacher-led ed camp professional development. And Dr. Sampson, I think we all sat 3 years on Flipgrid, which was really nice. It was nice to have you there and be a part of it. And I can honestly tell you that I have many teachers that go back to our ed camps because they are in live binder to re-up. Okay, I didn't really get what I needed to do, so I need to look at this again. So that's really a benefit for our staff members as well, as being able to go back and reteach yourself this. So yeah. Next slide, please, Ross. So some of our challenges in the equity was, prior to professional development pathways, we were discontinued during multiple transitions in leadership. So I know Ms. O'Brien did talk about, what are we doing for professional development? And we are starting, we know that that's really important for our teachers, our staff, to get that. And we know that, we're starting to, using those live binders that I just talked about, getting better at it, having the district leadership team now on board, and they're going to start to put together some of those things. So we're headed in the right direction there.
Can I interrupt and ask what a live binder is?
So it's on our website. So every ed camp that was done this August and throughout our professional development days that we had throughout the calendar year, they're put into a live binder. So you can go on the district website and click on that live binder that brings up every video that we've ever done, so that the teachers can go back and reteach themselves those what do I want to say? I just lost my word. Anyways, those professional development opportunities. So if it's, how do I do Zoom? What are some things in Zoom? So it collects that information for them. Okay. the loss of parent engagement, and I did talk about this, our communication and our trust as a result of the pandemic restrictions, especially during remote learning, technology struggles. We talked about this a little bit. That has been a huge challenge. Although, as Amy said earlier, you know, the use of Dojo is amazing. You know, I send things out all the time, and you know, the teachers can, or the parents can respond to us, or they can respond to the teachers. So it's a blessing to have that right in front of you. I can't tell you how many times on the weekends parents will say, what's Monday again? You know, if we have Spear Week or whatever is going on, what do I need for Monday? Or my child's going to be sick, or, you know, a family member is hurt. So, you know, being able to have that communication piece, and I know that I'll use Dojo because it is one of those wonderful tools for elementary. Another challenge that we have is the lack of teacher buy-in and consistency when curricular decisions are made without teacher input. So this is getting much better. I have to say that, you know, a couple of years ago, and we all know what, you know, there were curricular decisions that were made that were, you know, just handed and said, you will use this, and this is what we're going to be doing to teach whatever. But now teachers' input, you know, we spent a lot of time at the beginning of the year with some of those supplementals, you know, asking building leaders to ask their staff, you know, what supplemental resources do you need that are beneficial to your building? So that is, you know, one of those challenges, but we're getting better at it. And then the missing data due to the pandemic and the new format. So, there is some, you know, we know that we have gaps that we need to fill, and we're going to do the best that we can to do that. Any questions? I know there's going to be one.
All right. So the missing data, what are we referring to when we say missing data? We're talking about school phone numbers, email addresses,
that
all
most
the above,
definitely. Absolutely. That is one of the biggest things. And Amy talked about that earlier is, you know, we know that, you know, people change phone numbers. We just need to know that we need those updated all the time. We always have information going out. If we can't get that information to you, you know, you're going to lose out on some important things that are going on. So yes, absolutely.
Where do the teachers typically, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Where do the teachers typically go if they need a phone number or a email or parent contact information? Do they go to the SIS, or do they have some other tool that they go to?
So, you know, we get our emergency medical forms. We use those, and as a building leader, we try to update those at least twice, if not 3 times a year. You know, we'll send them home, you know, after Christmas break, after spring break, just to get some updates, because some people do forget to call us and say, hey, I got a new phone number. But we just learned in our principals meeting earlier that we're going to be going to a new system that's really going to be beneficial to, you know, our parents and the teachers, that everything's going to be housed in one area and you can, you know, electronically go to it. So it's not going to be that piece of paper, it's going to be electronic. So that'll be a great thing.
And that really gets at the issue of equity, right? So that way we have faster access to the things that we need to help our kids out the best. So any other questions or comments out there? Thank you so much. This was absolutely tremendous. Anybody have any questions or comments out there? All right.
Awesome. I'm going to turn it over to Principal Supriya Collington for teaching and learning.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for the time and the opportunity. I am sharing this because teaching and learning, honestly, is such an immense component of our strategic plan. So my counterpart, Monique Stewart, is going to start us off, and then I will piggyback after she's done. It's all yours, Ms. Stewart.
Thank you, Supriya.
You're welcome.
So for this part, we had a lot of fun working this out. We had to minimize it a little bit. But to start off with the teaching, we have been making huge strides in this area of virtual learning. this experience is not necessarily a negative one. This has been a positive one for all of us because think about it. We had to catch up with the rest of the world, okay? I mean, a lot of us, both of the principals, the teachers, we used a lot of paper. And I mean, that was something that we didn't have to do anymore. We caught up with the rest of the world. That traditional passive approach to learning that left for a while, you know, and it became this musical dance between the iPads, the laptops, and our document cameras. So catching up with the rest of the world, our teachers were able to just navigate through this process. And it was a lot of tears and stress, but look where we are. I mean, our kids are so far ahead. Our preschoolers who are using like Seesaw, they can navigate through Seesaw as one of the platforms. They can navigate through the Flipgrid and the Zoom, you know, and Loom. Implementing this curriculum and academic support specialists, that team, that CAST team, they were right there with us, supporting our teachers. If they had to go up to a classroom because the volume wasn't working properly on that teacher's computer, or perhaps they were having issues bringing the students in. Sometimes we had issues where they just couldn't connect to the Google Classroom and make that connection, but they were right there to support us. So we're so happy that that CAST team has been there to help us and still helping us. If we can go to the next slide. This additional experience is, what is that doing for our students, leaving so much of that paper pencil? We were able to go with like virtual field trips, natural history museums, Underground Railroad, the Playhouse Square, all virtual, you know, where the learning was brought to the student and a lot of times brought to the parent who, let's be honest, they became our co-parents, you know, our co-teachers rather, because when that student needed assistance, that parent was there to help, or vice versa. If that teacher needed to have a chat with that parent, maybe move that parent into another separate room to have a conference, we were able to do that. So the parents were learning, we were learning all at the same time. We had drive-through libraries on a cart where I remember our media specialists going outside and the students and the parents knew to be there at a certain time so they can get those new books that were ready and clean and updated for them. And then as they return more books, we just cleaned them and got them ready for the next set of students. So that teacher became the encourager, that teacher became an advisor, and that teacher became a coach, and so did the parent, working right alongside of each other. We also, for the live streaming with the itinerant and support staff, a lot of times they pre-recorded their lessons where the students had to go in, they would do the assignment, listen to the lecture, and then now a lot of times that teacher then went into the classroom to help support that teacher, you know. So initially it was like pre-recorded. Then as we came back into the building, now those teachers are working alongside each other, still using that technology. So it's been a transformation, but for us, I mean, when we look at the big picture, this has been an awesome experience. All right, Supriya, let's say have a question. I'm turning it back to you.
Okay, I'll wait for.
Oh, you don't get off that easy.
I'll wait for some questions. Monique, it's still you.
Look, that was a quick pass. That was like you running the 4x1 and you're yelling stick. No.
Right? Right.
My goodness. All right. Does anybody have any questions out there? Comments?
Great job, Ms. Stewart.
Great job, great job, great job. So my question, my one looming question is, and it's probably a big overarching question here. So what are you going to keep? Like all this newfound stuff, right? Mm-hmm. So starting next fall, what are some of the things that you picked up during this time academically that you guys are like, wow, we didn't realize this existed, but I think we're going to keep it. And then there's some antiquated practices that you're like, we really didn't need to do that because it was so inefficient. You know, just real quick, if there's anything off the top of your head that you've heard staff say that we want to keep this, we can't live without it, we want to dump this because it just, it's past time for it.
We just had a staff meeting last week. We usually have them Tuesday mornings now. And they told us, look, because we were talking to them about the Envision Math books, and we had to write down, okay, how many books do you need? How many Envision Math? How many Wonders? And they're like, look, I want to stay with the technology. You know, I mean, it's good to have it because some people are very, you know, they need to touch and feel that paper. And so I think it's good to have. But honestly, most of our teachers were like, we want to continue to do our teaching online because we have all of our resources right there, you know, and they can take that, depending on what it is, they can take that and put it right into Power School, like when it comes to grading, things of that sort. So they want to continue using this technology.
Are your folks going to keep the Google Classrooms?
Oh, yeah. I think as a whole, because this is all about one, let me be clear, it's not just what Stephen Hannes is doing or what Washington is doing, but I think collectively, I think all of our schools are totally trying to do the Google Classroom, continue that.
Okay, excellent. Be interesting to see what the printing budget has shrunk down to for the year.
Definitely.
Interesting. Yeah, a couple more thoughts on that, Dr. Sampson. I think something that we heard, the value of Class Dojo to communicate with parents and to get them engaged in real time was phenomenal this year. And I've heard that from a lot of folks that they want to utilize that platform to communicate next year. It's also phenomenal because it translates and into Spanish. And so it's really provides the bilingual support that we need. So that's really a huge component. And then definitely, you know, one of the things that I heard in one of our principal meetings was, boy, parent-teacher conference really improved. The attendance improved because they could, parents could access this from everywhere. So I think that may be perhaps the format that we may also adopt for next year because it worked well in increasing parent engagement. Those were two that
you went about 50 miles an hour past the layman out there. So backtrack about the parent-teacher conference real quick, just to give them some insight about what that is. It was a virtual parent-teacher conference, correct? Is that what you're saying?
We did. Yeah, that was this year. We had in the past, we had folks sign up for slots and come in person. And this time, due to our learning situation, we really, we created virtual parent-teacher conferences. And so teachers gave chunks of time, 2, 3, 4 hours per session. And parents were able to Zoom in from wherever they were at. And some were from the car and some were, so I think it just created more flexibility from them. So they were able to participate more.
Yeah, and I do believe our CEO said he wanted to model that. So he's doing his Zoom session right now from the car. So he wanted to model that just for this meeting. How awesome is that? Talk about a person that goes the extra mile, literally. Thank you so much. This has been great. This has been great.
So I'll continue. So some more of our successes, we're back to one more slide back, Ross, if you're navigating. Thank you. Successes. So another way that we really continued with the teaching and learning, it wasn't just initially at the beginning of the year with our cast members, but it continued. We leveraged our teacher-based teams throughout the week, and to, we shifted the focus from these teams that typically analyzed a lot of data and looked at NWA scores and summative test scores, and also some student work, and talked about, looked at best instructional strategies to improve that. Well, we changed the focus of that this year because, we didn't really have so many summative items to look at. So we kind of had to look at those formative things and really talk about, hey, what's working for you? What are you doing here? So it really provided a platform for the teachers to collaborate and talk about how do we shift? What do we do now to assess in a virtual environment? So that was one way that we leveraged teacher-based teams. Another way that we really utilized those weekly sessions was to talk about improving student engagement. And because that's what we learned as a whole, we weren't seeing the students on Zoom. And well, what are you doing? How are you helping? And what are some things that are working for you to get some more students online? So they shared best practices about getting students engaged a little bit more. We also collaborated on new methods for collecting data in a virtual environment. This was interesting because, boy, you know, we didn't have, again, testing and paper pencil tests and things that we brought to the table when we physically met for our TBTs. And so this way it was, again, looking at what were the picture samples on Dojo that this one submitted, you know, working with the youngest of our learners in the district. This posed, collecting schoolwork posed such a challenge for us, but our teachers really rose to that challenge by adapting and coming up with various ways of collecting that data. Another one, a success, and really this was a dialogue that was started. It was shifting the mindset of grading practices and really focusing on what does mastery of standards look like during remote learning, and do we have realistic expectations of what we want the kids to be able to do in this limited chunk of a Zoom session? So it really opened up a forum for us to discuss and have dialogue about that during our teacher-based team times. And I'll talk a little bit more about that when we talked about a couple of challenges, because that also posed a couple of challenges that we had to navigate through. And the last bullet point there was also, you know, we kind of had to identify the percentage of breakdown when it came to report card time, how our report cards going to be given. We kind of had to take a look at assignments and the meaningful assignments versus, boy, is that busy work? So we really had to look at some qualitative items rather than quantitative. Okay, next slide. Thank you. So, you know, those were some of the great conversations that we had as a learning community for our elementary buildings. And some of the challenges, you know, boy, we've got the youngest little ones in our elementary buildings, and accessing student technology for the youngest of the learners was really difficult. Our kindergarten and first graders use iPads, and our second through fifth graders use laptops. And, you know, just learning how to turn things on and navigating through programs. And not only were they focused on mastering standards, but also mastering technology standards. And you know, we've got to work on this before you can move forward with any of the learning. So that was a little bit of a challenge, but boy, they picked up very quickly. And now I think they're experts and better than all of us, I tell you. We also, you know, this was the teachers navigating, this was a challenge for us. And we navigated different instructional tools, you know, document camera, live streaming, instructional models and methods of delivery were shifting as we went through the different phases of learning and teaching between remote, hybrid, and in person. So that really, we really had to have some time for our teachers to get used to the different ways, and they were learning from peers. And the CAST team, again, was instrumental in offering guidance for that. Another challenge that we noticed was, you know, during teacher-based teams, we typically have meetings, weekly meetings where we physically sit and chat and bring evidence and share ideas. But boy, this was difficult because we had to really collaborate via Zoom. And nobody was near each other. So we were sharing and learning and sharing things. And really, though, a great positive came out of this because we really ended up doing a lot of vertical articulation and taking a look at, oh, what are you doing in first grade? And here I am in second grade doing this. And what standards are you covering and what challenges are you having? So that really became a positive. And so the last part was, it was about grading. And I'll come back to that because it connected to our success as well. But it was really difficult for us to, when we were doing our report cards at first, because we had to really have a mindset change in looking at how we graded traditionally. Traditionally, perhaps we were looking at tests and quizzes and assessments and homework and classwork and projects. And, we weren't doing that much online in a virtual environment. So we really had to think about, what does grading look like now? And really think about, oh, well, younger students can post pictures on Dojo. And that's how we're collecting the work samples. They're uploading things on Google Classroom to turn in items. Students were bringing in items in person to turn into the teachers at times. So those were some conversations that we had to talk and really navigate through some of the challenges, and really they worked so hard to adapt and be flexible. And I think all in all, to sum it up, our TBT times really provided us an opportunity to share best practices, participate in vertical articulation, and also really talk about anticipating potential challenges coming up. So that was a little bit about teaching and learning, which is so huge for us as we are in a school community. That's all I have. That was a lot. Questions, anything specific?
It was a lot, but it was good stuff.
Really great stuff.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
I was going to say that I've never heard, your voice is such that even the challenges sounded so positive just the way that you presented them.
Oh gosh. And I have to tell you, I'm so nervous about sharing in front of large crowds. So thank you for that. All right, if there's nothing else.
That was good. Real quick question for you.
Sure.
With the little ones using the iPads,
yeah.
What do you foresee for next year? Are you going to continue to keep that going, or are you going to kind of put that to the side because they'll be in person?
Yeah, and I think I'm going to also get our fabulous Mr. Stevens to help me answer that one. And I'm not sure if he's still on here, our technology director. I know we've had a couple of conversations. I'm not sure what has been decided firmly at this time. Drew, are you there?
I'll just jump in real quick. Actually, that's part of Drew's presentation tonight.
Oh,
nothing
gotcha.
has been officially decided, but we have a plan in place we'd like to present to the board tonight, and the commission, of course, but to make sure that we're on the same page and give folks an opportunity to have some input.
Excellent. All right, sounds good. And student support.
Yeah, it's me, Bridget. So a lot of what my colleagues have presented, it's amazing. And so I'll probably reiterate some of the bullet points that they have. But when we're talking about all of these initiatives with teaching and learning and equity and student support, and healthy culture. We've been talking a lot on the DLT about how, we can't let all of these live in silos. So the fact that they're kind of overlapping is actually really great news. So when we're talking about our successes for student support, we're talking about proactive and preventative supports are being implemented in the building, so that RTI, the response to intervention process, which is the academic piece, is in place in every building, and everybody is engaged in Pbis in some sort of aspect, which is the behavioral end. So that's fantastic. We've talked about increased two-way communication with families with successful implementation as a data tool. So we are all using, I do believe all of the elementary buildings are using Dojo. We're using other social media aspects such as Facebook and Twitter. And this really and truly has, between all buildings, we've talked about it as administrators, it's really increased our two-way communication between everybody, between the families and the buildings, whether it be, you know, the music teacher or the regular education, the special education, the gifted, or, you know, the administrator. So there's a lot more communication that we feel that's happening this year. We have an increase in healthcare professionals. We do have a nurse in every building, and we have talked about, sorry, I'm like in the sun, I had to move because I was getting sketchy reception in the other room. But we've talked about, you know, the social workers. We all pretty much, I do believe, also have outside agencies that come in and provide some counseling to our kiddos in the buildings. We have attendance meetings with the team approach. So they are our AIT meetings. There are attendance intervention meetings. And these happen weekly in every single building. I can speak from Tony Morrison. Our attendance guy is amazing. We work as a team together to make sure that we're talking with the family. We get the social worker involved. The SRO gets involved sometimes. And the AP and the principal, we all get together. My assistant principal makes daily phone calls to families if the child is not present in the school. We want to make sure that the kids are there, whether it is, you know, at home or online. We also have put aside some time for the intentional instruction of the social emotional learning standards. These were literally just adopted through ODE, and I want to say not last year, but the end of the year before. So they are part of our curriculum. It's something that we're all, you know, responsible for teaching. There are some things that I think everybody has mindful music, which it's about a 10 to 15 minute activity that the kids do on a daily basis. And then some of the buildings have also adopted Second Step, which is a tier 1 instruction for all students in the building. And we also, as we talked about, we have social workers. And each building can refer children and families for services. So a lot of that is the wraparound services that we can support the family with. And then Ross, if you wouldn't mind moving to the next slide. So some of the challenges that we have are streamlining our support process with the limited data that we have available to us. This is something that we're working on. We do not have a lot of data on behavior for kids. We do have Power School where principals do enter and teachers or anybody enters in some baseline data on kids, but it's kind of more of a reactive process instead of a proactive process. So we have talked about like universal screeners and progress monitoring in the behavior aspect. Integrating RTI and Pbis within the MTSS framework, speaking as a principal, these have kind of lived in separate domains. And it's historically so actually, like MTSS, I believe was introduced in 2009. So it's fairly a recent philosophy and education that marries these processes. So we're working towards that as a district. Funding initiatives for Pbis. So, you know, we want to recognize, especially with the youngers, is that, you know, we do have Dojo, but Dojo are points that they're awarded. It's not necessarily something tangible that the kids get. You know, we all go to work, we get a paycheck, right? Same with kids. Like they still like to be rewarded in some sort of way that they can actually like understand through that tangible piece of it. So that has been, we talked about that during this meeting when we put this PowerPoint together, and we all do it kind of differently. You know, we do have a building budget fund, but sometimes based on the allocation of funds doesn't always necessarily equate to getting incentives for children. So that's where that, when I talked about earlier, that community partnership is so very, very, very important. And that, because of COVID this year, has been really, really hard, because not a lot of people are going out. Not a lot of people are kind of, getting together and collaborating. So that is something that we do find is a challenge. Connecting, engaging with parents who have limited access to technology. And then these two kind of go together, the increasing the capacity of parents to utilize technology. Let's not forget to recognize that our families, whether it's the parents, the grandparents, the aunties, the uncles, whomever, have not totally stepped up their game this year. Like, they went from not possibly having technology to all of a sudden there are a collaborative partner in educating our kids this year. So we did talk about as a group that we need to provide more kind of like professional development for our parents to understand how to use the technology. I think that was kind of like piecemeal between buildings and not, necessarily a whole district thing, because it was just, everything happened so quickly. To make sure that everybody's on the same page of like, this is what we're using, this is how we're getting on. I think we did a great job about, like, we did as building administrators kind of come together and say that we're going to use some of the same, programs and applications for our kids, but then also making sure that our families are more than equipped to help in that aspect. And then also providing equitable access to wraparound services. So just making sure that our families who actually need it are getting it. That is something that I do believe that the One Needs assessment kind of brought to light for a lot of the administrators. There were some parts of it that we're not even certainly sure of. Like, we're not sure who our homeless families are. We're not sure, like, transient families, it's just not something, and there are so many variables as to why we don't know that, whether it's the school end or whether it's the family end, because it's a pride thing. But I think that we need to make sure that we're recognizing that and providing more equitable access to everyone. Any questions?
That was great.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. And any thoughts about providing a streamlined portal that will house your Pbis data for the interactions that teachers are having with the kiddos?
I think that is, this is my third year here in the district. And I think that, like, RTI, and the reason that I was drawn to MTSS, which is why I kind of piloted for my building, was that RTI was always kind of separate than Pbis. And so we would have a lot of kids coming to RTI, and they'd be coming to RTI because there was a problem. Like, teachers, phenomenal, amazing, right? Like, they know that there's a problem, but it was usually something that was academic. So something in the building that we've been trying to talk about is that, is it an academic problem or is it a behavior problem, right? And so I think that also with the adoption of the social emotional learning standards, which is quite recent, I think that as adults, too many times we make assumptions about what kids should come to school with. And so I kind of adhered to, like, for my preschool and my kindergarten teachers, like, do you expect the kids to be able to come to your classroom knowing letters and letter sounds? And it's always, an adamant no. But so we can't expect our kids coming to school with behaviors that we would expect them to come to school with. So I do think that the adoption of the social, especially right now, I mean, it is kind of an irony that it was adopted right before this whole thing happened, right? Where a lot of, families have had to fend for themselves, especially the children, because the parents are at work and the kids are at home and they need to learn. So I think that I'm actually helping facilitate the PBIS committee with Ross. So I think that we're starting to make ground. I think that it was a great step forward this year that we have adopted district-wide expectations about being kind, because that has not been the case in the past. So I think that it is, it's pre-K through 12th grade. So I do think that we're taking steps forward, but I do think that we do have a lot of ground that we need to cover.
And your formal partners throughout the city and region, are there any partners that specifically stick out that you want to kind of highlight here today?
I think that every building and building principals, please speak up, but I think every building has kind of sought those out on their own. So I've partnered with the Cleveland Clinic. That was hard this year because we really didn't have a lot of outside people coming into the buildings. We did a walk on Wednesdays, which we initiated last year, and with the social distancing, we did it at Toni Morrison this year to go along with the kindness initiative. We adopted One School, One Book, and it was Wonder. So we did We're All Wonders for pre-K through first grade and then second through fifth. But it was more of a building thing where we went out and we asked for donations and partnerships. And we probably raised anywhere between $800 and $1,000 for initiatives for the kids. But I really think it would be a really great thing if we got more community partnerships to help with it, because.
But Dr. Kaiser, I just want to interrupt you. One community partnership that we have, and I'm going to conclude, that is Boys and Girls Club.
That's true.
Boys and Girls Club is in every school. They provide not only after school care, but activities, also family in need. They did an awesome job throughout the pandemic for parents who had to work. So a lot of our students went on Pearl Avenue to work with the Boys and Girls Club for, like, they needed Wi-Fi or they just needed someone, not a babysitting issue, but come in and assist the students. So Boys and Girls Club is offered throughout our schools as well, which is a vital resource.
Yeah, thank you, Chantel. I appreciate that. We don't have it in our building, so
next year you will. You will.
Well, we did last year, but we don't this year. But they have.
I'll just let you know, you will.
Well, they really have been an integral part of helping provide outside services for our kids. I mean, that is somebody that we refer them to, like, hey, your kid needs some extra support. And we've had a lot of kids come and just not even had a hard time just functioning around other kids because they've only been at home with mom and dad and sister for the last year. So and just getting them to be, in a social experience with other kids is better.
And one more before we forget, Bridget, I'm going to cut you off, but El Centro has been awesome as well. So just want to say that too. That's from Marie Dashit, because I know they service her building, and also play up to the Browns camp. I'm not a sports person, but we're going Play 60, Girls on the Run, Girl Scouts, Lorain Library donated $11,000 of books to Washington, Guidestone, Wraparound Services, North Center, Belfair, and we can continue on.
Pbis, that's It has been very up to each building.
Putting them in the chat.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we have it all in the chat. We can keep going. But thank you.
Do it.
And Mercy Health is a huge partner for us. We have a clinic in our schools, and we're working to expand those services. And by this time next year, we'll have dozens more that we've already established, but we just need time to get through this pandemic to start spending some more time together.
How can I forget Katie from Mercy? Yes, shout out to Katie from Mercy.
Mercy Health is phenomenal.
Liz and Katie, they're phenomenal.
I cried when we went down from 3 buildings to 1.
Oh, well, don't be so bashful, you guys. What's so phenomenal about this Mercy Health thing? Put it out there for the public to know.
Can I start? Only because I was there when it was another buildings too. So I think it came, I used to do, I still do monthly coffee chats with my parents. And I was also the building principal at Washington Elementary as which is one of our 3 English language buildings. And it was during one of my parent chats that one of my parents said, do you know that when we come to the United States that we can't get prescriptions filled? And I'm like, why not? Because US pharmacies do not honor prescriptions from Puerto Rico. So then they have to get into a doctor and get that checkup. And it's taken them 6 weeks to even longer. So I said, wait a minute. We walked down the hall to Katie. Katie happened to be there. Katie got them into a doctor within 24 hours and that child had a prescription. So they really help the equity for a lot of our parents. And a lot of our parents are afraid to go to the doctors, and to have it in our buildings, it makes them comfortable.
It's also a great support to have right in our building, and we're lucky to have that. It's for our staff. We have a lot of our staff using it as well, and they can get in quickly and really get whatever they need looked at very quickly, and then be back at work if they need to the next day. And so it really saves, it really encourages attendance and then keeps staff in our building as well.
We had an eye doctor there too at one time.
Yes, he's still there.
All right, thank you so much. And is that the end of the slide deck, or is this the last?
There's 2 more, but they've said everything. So I'm going to just try to re-say everything.
I'm supposed to introduce you. This is Marie. She's going to be talking about the Titan improvement process along with Mida. So Maida. I thought I wrote it down phonetically correct.
And I have to shout out Maida and John Monteleone. I had oral surgery, so like my face is hidden under the hair, but it's like this big. So I'm going to try. I'm sorry if I'm not clear. Maida, jump in. So how about that new DLT? We are so excited. So there was an application process, then there was an interview process, and now they rolled it out on Thursday. And it includes members of our entire school community. We have parapros on there. We have elementary teachers on there. We have middle school teachers, high school teachers, building principals or building leaderships or admin, and then we also have district. And the best part of it is that we are learning more about our community. We are having our first 3 meetings at the Lorain Historical Society, so we can learn more about our community and really get to the why. Why are these needs in our community, and how can we meet the needs of our students? From there, the DLT drives on to the BLT, and each building BLT should mirror that DLT. For example, being in an EL building, not only do we have primary teachers on it, we have intermediate teachers on there, but we also have our English learner, a teacher on there, because to represent our English learners, we have an intervention specialist on there, and we usually have a parent on the BLT as well. The best part about the BLT is we collaborate together and we present to the staff together. So when there's new initiatives, it's not coming because Marie said so. It's not coming because Dr. Graham said so. It's coming because the teams, the teachers who represent their colleagues have come together and feel this is what's best for our community. And then our TBTs this year have been phenomenal. Some schools do them vertically and some do them by grade level. And right now I'm going to skip down. You can see four dots down is prioritizing levered learning targets. Right now, the CAS team has really helped us with that. They've developed a real criteria. So what does that mean? We're looking at the standards. We're looking for readiness, endurance, assessment, and leverage. So for readiness, we're really making sure that the standards that we're teaching is part of the learning progression that will be built upon, not just for that grade level, but for grade levels coming. And then for endurance, we want to make sure that the standards will provide knowledge and skills that will be useful and necessary for far into the student's future academic and professional career. So it's just not a one stop and go. It's going to be built upon throughout the years. Assessment is crucial. It means that as a teacher, you are selecting standards that will be measured on district and state assessments. And leverage means the standards provide knowledge or skills that will be valuable in several content areas. So our building leadership, our TBTs have been working collaboratively sharing best practices, and to build upon what some of the other principals have said. First, we worked from home. The teachers were working from home. And then we made that big shift of coming into the building. There were tears. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to connect everything. I don't know what's the best way to introduce this lesson. And teachers supported teachers. They shared ideas. Hey, try this. And it was so comfortable to come into work and know, hey, I may not know this, but the teacher down the hall may, and they're going to help me. So that really helped. I felt we unite our teams even better. Collaborating through 5K, pre-K through grade 5, our ELA work group, teacher circle. Basically, as you know, because we are currently hybrid, we have and not having art, music, and gym being physically taught in the buildings, our day physically ends either at 12:30 for an early building or 1:30 for a late building, but the day is not over. Our teachers have come together to decide how can we meet the needs of those children after that time. So there's small groups going on. Our small groups include the art teacher, the gym teacher, and the music teacher teaching groups. Also includes the paraprofessionals. It is one for all. It's great, the collaboration that we see. They are like, hey, zoom in or come up to the classroom to see what's going on. Thank you, Dr. Kaiser, for talking so much about multi-tiered systems of support. But we are looking at the needs of the students and really looking and digging into the why. Why is this child acting up? Why can't they log in? And just digging through so we can help and get to the root cause. And right now, all of our teams have answered all these questions for the One Needs assessment. And again, some of us have worked with the state support team to determine areas of strength and growth. But we really kept digging. Why? Why is this happening? So why aren't they coming to school? Why don't they have transportation? Why don't they have gas? Why aren't they coming to parent-teacher conferences? And we found out some of our parents are working 2 jobs. So what can we do to help them? So having these conversations have really been a time for us to wake up and see some of the issues that our parents have, the hurdles that they have to cross. It is not because they don't care. They just need our help. And we're able to guide them a lot better now because of the collaboration that we have amongst the team members. Okay. One more slide. There have been some challenges. And through these challenges, some things that have come across is collaborating effectively among all educators and support staff. Some of this happened when some teachers were still working remote at home, but again, via Zoom, being provided time in the day for them to meet. Those challenges, district office heard what the challenges were, and they gave us the time to meet those. There are gaps in learning, and those gaps are because we went home in March. When we left here in March, I personally thought, oh, we'll be back in 2 weeks. Spring break came and we still weren't back. I don't think any of us thought it was gonna last that long, but here we are. We started slow and steady, but it proved it was the right thing to do for our district. And then when we came back for hybrid, we still noticed there were still some gaps, but we are looking very closely on how to close those gaps. But those gaps are due to the different learning modes, the changes in them. Attendance was a problem in the beginning, and technology. We were having many issues in technology. And like we said, hey, come get this technology. We sent it home, we gave it to them. First day of school, I could basically say it was a line out the door. Parents crying, they didn't understand. And we said, hey, we're here to help you. Many of us who were not technology gurus learned how to fix this technology, called upon the CAS team to help. There were supplementals for teachers to be also assist with more with the curriculum with the technology, but they've also helped the parents. At this point in the school year, there's not one person on the staff who would not take the time to help a parent who still may be having problems. We're also looking at changing our mindset because this has been hard. I shot out teachers. When a teacher came to me at the beginning saying, hey, I think I'm gonna have to quit my job. I don't know how to do this. I said, well, neither do I. Neither does all of America. This has never happened. We're in this together. But it took some time because teachers take a lot of pride in their profession. They put a lot of work in it. They do a lot of hours. And then boom, we had to do this and we didn't know how. And we felt vulnerable. Not only are you on Zoom, parents are on Zoom watching you. So they felt very vulnerable. So it was that mindset. It is great to see what principals across the district are doing to help their teachers with this, to make them comfortable. And now those same teachers are giving PD to their colleagues. What a way to grow. Ramping up our understanding of how healthy teams work. So we've got to all work outside of our safety box. And some of us are still a little bit uncomfortable, but we're getting there. We're supporting each other. Unfortunately, this has come up also, missing data. So when we were doing our one needs assessment, we're like, oops, we don't have any data from last year. Hey, Bill, can you give us, is it okay to use the data from 2 years ago? And of course he said yes, but we're so data driven that was hard to let go that we had gaps in our education. Maida, anything else to add? I know I spoke quickly.
No, you did wonderful. Thank you so much. Awesome. I'm kind of new in administrations, my first year. And when I was been looking at this and through all the meetings that we've been having, I kept thinking everything that everyone has spoken is part of the improvement plan. I mean, all of that, all these things that we're going to be doing with culture, equity, teaching and learning, student supports, it's all the improvement part. It's all the improvement plan and the processes that are going to take to get us there. I'm really excited though, because being new to administration and this side of the classroom and teaching, the work that's being done through the DLT and through our principal meetings, our TBTs is amazing. And although, there's growing pains, I really have a lot of faith in the work of our teachers, in the work of our teachers, our administrators, our leadership. And really, I have a lot of faith in our parents that I've seen grow so much in the past year through such difficult times. I really have faith that I am not from Lorain, but I consider myself to be now from Lorain, been living here for 35 years, but I feel really proud of the work that we can do for the students and the community of Lorain. Any questions?
I love that, Maida. I think one of the best things is it was such a safe environment from top level down. It was okay to say, hey, I don't know. Yeah. And when the teachers saw that, sometimes they would say, I don't know. And I'd be like, you know what? I don't know either. Let me give a call. Because it was all new. And it just brought us all together. So were there some bumps and hurdles we had to cross? Many. Do we have more to cross? Many. But we're doing it together.
But we did it together. And I think it brought us really so much closer together as a team and as a family that I just feel like we're going to grow. It's a seed that's going to grow to some beautiful things.
Can I just give a shout out, you guys? That picture that you see is Washington teachers last week. We are prioritizing standards and working together. And it was so much joy because it was the first time that we were back together, not Zooming. And so it was fabulous to see them all working and collaborating in person.
Love that. They loved it too. I think we were afraid to come back. And once we came back, we saw how safe it was, always having the data with the numbers, that it has made us easier to collaborate as well. A lot of support coming from the top down.
Excellent. Any questions out there from the ADC or comments from the board or anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to thank our administrators. I mean, this week it was our elementary principals. Last month it was middle school, and the month before that was our high school staff. And I hope you can sense and feel their enthusiasm and excitement around the work that's being done and how proud they are of the staffs they have, because people have gone through a lot during these crazy times, and people are stepping up and taking care of one another. And it's just it's a pretty amazing thing to watch. So I thank them for their leadership. It doesn't happen without you.
Absolutely. All right, excellent. Appreciate everybody taking the time out to do this, and we'll move into the next part of the agenda. But before we move into the next part, Ross, could you hit stop share? There we go. And then is it possible to get everybody on the same screen? Is that possible? I think. Can we get like a full group picture, like the Brady Bunch? I don't know if that's possible.
One of those, like, I don't know, who do I call?
All right, there we go. There we go. So I think everybody can see everybody, right?
There's 2 pages, I think.
There's 2 pages. Okay. Yep, so everybody can see. So before we move on to the next thing, let's just take a quick little brain break because this is a lot of information to absorb. So if we could, and Ross, if you could take a selfie, a zoomy, is that it? A selfie zoomy? Maybe that's what it is. So wherever you are, let me see this person right here. So give the person a high five. Whoever's next to you, give them a high five.
Dr. Graham and Dr. Sampson.
There we go. So just give everybody a high five for a job well done. If we could take a quick little zooming. You got it, Ross?
I got him.
I can't.
All right.
Ross, I
All
must
right.
be doing. Ross, this is Yvonne. I must be doing something wrong again.
You couldn't do a high five?
Nope, I couldn't do a high five. Nor could I get in.
No,
I
we
wanted-
see you.
No,
we see you.
We got you,
You
Yvonne.
did
I got you.
You did it.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I got you.
You got me.
All right.
You're
Thanks.
good. Yep, you're good.
Plenty of great people on this
Let me
call to
tell you.
support you.
The presentation was wonderful. It was so stunning and just so informative and so appreciated. It just makes me have so much pride when we go to Columbus that we know that we should be the Board of Education everybody is trying to do an imitation of. We deserve it.
Look, the floor is yours, so keep going. Keep
Well
going.
said.
I'm liking the way you're talking.
Well, I just had to say that because we do
Absolutely.
work when they say collaborative. We are the model for collaboration, for absolutely collaboration. We've got it.
Yes, indeed.
Should
Yes,
I say
indeed.
amen, amen?
And the member said amen. All right.
Thank you.
So let's shift to the next part here. I do believe the next part of the agenda is the communications update. Communications update?
Yeah, communications update. We had a communications audit done. So the plan, and actually this was to be done at the last board meeting that was canceled because of technology issues. Our wireless was down everywhere in the region. So we couldn't do some things. But it was, the plan was to present the path that we followed to do the communications audit, the findings of the audit, the plan that's been implemented, the steps we've taken, as well as where we need to be. Long story short, it's a lot. So Erin volunteered to do a video that she will share with everybody as opposed to making this meeting longer than it is. So there'll be a video coming out to everybody, walking you through all the aspects, and then she'll make this available for questions that are not. Next on the agenda, if I could just jump ahead, would be Drew. And Drew, if you could kind of walk us through what your thoughts are on technology, the Chromebook piece, the MacBook piece, the process we're going to follow to further engage our staff to listen to what thoughts are as we move forward. And then, of course, this is going to be our technology plan moving forward. It needs to be something we can sustain. So costs associated with that, and Tia, if you could chip in to assure that we are able to follow this.
Absolutely. I won't go into a lot of detail on why a migration to Chromebooks is a good idea unless there are questions around it. But as you've heard tonight, there are a lot of issues with technology. And in just the few months that I've been here, it's a recurring theme. We've heard it, I counted 7 times tonight. And the focus moving forward should be, because we've had so much support for continuing digital learning and one-to-one with devices in the students' hands, the focus should be on so much more about the story than figuring out how to make the book work, so to speak. We currently have I've had a lot of discussions with principals, teachers, administrators, and everyone is agreeing that Chromebooks are a fantastic resource to use. They're so much easier to administrate than the Windows machines we're using now. And one of the real big benefits is we can provide a little bit more management in the hands of our very talented CAST team and our teacher techs in the building, as well as teachers and administrators. And by that, I mean the ability to reset passwords for students because 1 or 2 students can't access a resource. The ability to unblock websites temporarily to allow learning to continue even when something's been categorized wrong by the content filter, or to unblock YouTube videos, that they have that ability to some degree now, but there are still some roadblocks in the way of that. But these initiatives, especially moving to Chromebooks, will allow teachers and the support teams that are in the buildings to provide a lot more support and make learning easier on the digital front for the students. We currently have a request for proposals out for Chromebooks that does expire in about 12 hours from now. Tia and Rachel were able to find some funding for us to move forward immediately, which is what initiated the RFP late last week. And vendors will be sending in all of their bids by about 7 a.m. tomorrow. That's when it cuts off. And we'll be able to fund about the first third of the total number of Chromebooks we'd need to replace our Windows machines. Replacing all because the costs are not fixed and there are extra things to consider, and we haven't seen any of the bids yet and won't until tomorrow morning. It's very difficult to say exactly how much replacing all of the Windows laptops that students are currently using with Chromebooks will cost. But on the high end, it will be around $1.6 million. And again, the funding that pardon me, Tia was able to help uncover for us will cover about a third of that. I'll have much more details on the pricing after we open the bids tomorrow morning. The funding for the rest of the devices before the beginning of the school year would come partially from a few other grant sources, general fund, possibly ESSER funds. There are still a few discussions revolving around that. Replacement of the devices and repair can be done in our department using our own skill sets that we have within the department. A life cycle for the devices will be about 3 years. We can start to replace, in the third year, we can start to replace the devices, about 1/3 of them each year, which would be around $500,000 to $600,000, depending on how many devices we need to replace and at what time. Does anyone have any questions yet?
If I could jump in, Drew, and just emphasize a couple of points. First of all, the technology, I'm going to applaud the technology department for keeping what we have afloat for as long as we have. It was not designed to be, we had some old stuff, I guess is the best way to say it. And we duct taped and band-aid some stuff up well enough to get us through. And again, I want to applaud our department for pulling that off. And I also want to speak a little bit to the RFP that went out. There's like a window that goes through, whether it's the end of year stuff that we have to have things closed up for our department, but for Tia's department, but we have some title funds that are available. We lose some funds soon. So there's like a window of time that we can get this stuff done. So, and I talked to Mark about this before I did it, but we sent out the RFP, and if the board is not supportive, we won't do it. But we had to get these things up and running to make us appropriate if it is something we chose to do. So for us, we're looking at, we've learned a lot this year when it comes to technology and how to use it in ways that we've never even dreamt before, and collectively speaking anyway. And we need to keep this momentum. And in order to do it, we have to have the technology, and not just for our students, but to make sure our staff has what's appropriate and what they need to make this thing happen. So my recommendation is based on functionality, quality, as well as cost. And although there's a big price tag up front, I would argue this is a big part of what ESSER funds are for, as it's just one more of the many opportunities that we have to provide additional supports for our kids as we recover from the pandemic, but also to catapult us further because our kids can't compete unless they're fluent with technology. And this is our opportunity to get them there.
I have a question. Will we be able to get enough computers so all the kids start the year with Chromebooks? Will we be
I believe her question was, will we be able to get enough devices for all the students to start the next school year with Chromebooks? I'm very confident that we will, simply because of the number of vendors that have reached out to us and said, we have this many and we need to move this many and we're getting this many more in. Part of the deployment that's going to make this successful is we're going to use many of the vendors what they call a white glove service. What that is we provide them with a little bit of information, such as how to log onto our wireless network, and we attach them to our Google accounts so that the devices show up ready to log in. We don't have to have them log in the district before the device ever works or to get their credentials working. And also they'll provide asset tagging for us. So the vendor themselves are removing a lot of the front end work that the tech department would normally be doing before the devices even show up on our loading dock. I'm very confident that we'll be able to have enough devices. Because so much of our curriculum is platform or device agnostic, it's all in a browser. If some students still needed to use the newer Windows machines that we have, they could still have the same learning experience, but some of the management wouldn't be there, such as preventing students from logging into their own accounts and bypassing certain management features that we can provide through the Chromebooks. So there may be a few things that fall through the cracks, but I'm very confident that, one, we'll be able to get all the devices, and two, if we can't, then we can still fill in the places where we don't have enough for students.
Can I just say, I was part of the rollout with Drew Stevens and another district, and I'm telling you, it was such a smooth transition. Drew, how many kids? Do you remember?
There was about 10,500 at the time, and there were about 1,500 that still used iPads. So 9,000?
Yeah, so if there's the man to do it, this is the man to do it. That's all I can tell you. It was a very smooth transition.
It's always a team effort, and we have a great team. We have a great team at Lorain. So I'm looking forward to a very similar experience between the cast members, the teacher techs, and our very remarkable tech team. Absolutely. It's also an effort by the principals and the teachers. It is a little bit of a learning curve in the sense that they have a new device. They'll need to know where the power button is, things like that. Are there any other questions?
Well, thank you so much, Drew. Any questions out there? All right, and as people think about these things, right, Drew, they can email you and contact you.
Absolutely.
Because this is high level stuff to have to process and go back to your building and figure out what's working, what's not.
Sure.
So I'm sure there's a process set up for that, and you have a help desk and all the other good stuff.
We do. Before the meeting began, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Before the meeting began, there was a question about collection of devices, the current devices the students have. And this kind of came into the Chromebook rollout as well. I want the collection of devices to be quick and easy for parents, administrators, and teachers. Ultimately, I would like to see as many devices that students have right now collected before a student can get a Chromebook before the beginning of next year. It doesn't, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't need to be a certain time or place for the ease of the principals and parents. If a parent needs to return a device at a school near their home instead of a school on the other side of town where their student is currently enrolled, we can make that happen. It's just logistics. And we still have communications and meetings going on within the department. And I was hoping to discuss it during the principals meeting a bit. We did have a lockdown that in a few of our buildings that prevented those conversations from taking place.
Obviously, this year's a little different when it comes to collecting devices because our kids need them till the end of school on the last day, and not all of our kids will be in that day. So our goal, and I think when Drew spoke earlier, actually texted me, said, I think it sounds like we don't have a plan when we do. And we do have a plan, but our goal is to be as flexible as we can be because, again, we're still in a pandemic. We have things going on, and we're going to be respectful of our parents. And we trust that this will all work out once things get to where they need to be. So, again, I want to thank Drew for his leadership, his flexibility, and his just constant support as we kind of fumble through goofy times with technology. And he has been just a sense of calm throughout.
Hey, I have a question. So the devices that get turned back in, what will happen to them? Will they be donated? Will you use them as backups? What are you going to do?
That's a great question. I've been in conversation with Tia about the funding sources that those devices came from because they came from several different funding sources. So my answer to that is some of them maybe could be donated, some could be recycled. they don't have very much resale value, which is unfortunately for us, that's the trend in replacing devices with other devices. Usually the sale of older devices so they can be refurbished and used at other districts that have fewer resources. But I don't have an answer to that until I can collect all of the funding sources. But I'm very flexible in what we do with them. Again, keeping some for spares in our laptop carts around buildings so that if there are any anomalies or issues with devices on testing days and things like that, we always have a backup. As well as there have been discussions about allowing seniors to take them with them. And again, that will depend on the funding sources of those devices. We can't allow a student to keep a device that 2 years ago was purchased with grant funds, for instance. But I certainly will update everybody when I have much more information.
Thank you.
Thanks, Drew.
Hey, Dr. Sampson.
Hey.
Hey, can I jump in for a minute to clean up some housekeeping from the board's perspective? Because some of us got to jump off and do some daddy duty things pretty quick, and I'd like to get some. So we'll roll through it pretty quick. So I'm gonna jump back into our agenda.
Absolutely.
Need approval of minutes for the April 26th meeting coming from my board, please. I think Bill made the motion to support. Any support?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Sturgill. Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson. And Mr. Williams.
All right, old business. We're okay there. Okay, report and recommendations of the treasurer. Do you have anything, Tia?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you very much. And report and recommendations of the CEO. And I think Jeff,
thank you, Mr. President.
Okay, there you go.
I turned my video off because I've got an unstable signal, and this at least lets me speak and listen. First of all, I want to clarify a comment earlier on graduation rate. We got the information before the meeting, and I didn't fully grasp it, I guess. 393 students are the number of students we started the school year with. We had 459 students responsible for from ninth grade. So right now we have 325 of the 393. But again, technically we have 325 of the 459. So I have more information for everybody on Friday, and I'll make sure we get a report out to everybody on exactly where we land. But I would like the board to consider for approval items 3.01 to 3.12.
Need a motion? Bill motion, is there a second? And looks like Yvonne seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturgill. Ms. Johnson. Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
And Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Dr. Graham.
Thank you. I'd like the board to consider for approval. Yep, I'd like the board to consider for approval 4.01 to 4.09 operations matters.
Need a motion? Bill, a motion? Any support?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Sturgill. Ms. Nazario.
Yes.
Mr. Ballard.
Yes.
Ms. Johnson. And Mr. Williams.
And that's all I have for you tonight, Mr. President.
All right, thank you. Any new business? Seeing none. Looks like our next meeting will be on the 24th instead of the 25th, because on the 25th is actually graduation. So it'll be on the 24th at the auditorium at the school. I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Sampson.
Okay, so from the ADC side, we are not going to go into executive session at this moment. So we're just going to move into the agenda and go into adjournment. Before we go into adjournment, just like to thank everybody this evening for the great work. I know it's been a long night, but it's been a fruitful night, seeing some of the great things happening at the elementary schools. ADC members, any comment?
Thank you.
Good job, everybody.
All right, so we're going to go to adjournment. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second. ADC meeting has adjourned.
And for the board, I need a motion to adjourn. Bill's motion.
Second.
Courtney support, roll call, please.
Mr. Sturgill, Ms. Nazario,
Yes.
Mr. Ballard,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson, and Mr. Williams.
Yes.
Great job, everybody. You guys did an awesome job today. I certainly appreciate all the effort so much. Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Take care.